Good morning, my name is Amanda Richards and I'm a Group Manager for Network and Asset Management at Surrey County Council. So 5 years ago in 2016 I was invited along to the AIA's Sharing Best Practice event to talk about Surrey's long-term plans for the maintenance of key highway assets. And so this year I've been invited again 5 years later to give you an update on where we've got to and where we're going. So what I'm going to cover today is the history of why we needed to do something different. So we'll go over a little bit of what I presented back in 2016. And I'm going to focus on our roads asset for everybody. You know, that's the key highway asset. But then we're also going to look a little bit about what we've done in Surrey on our other key highway assets as well. And then I'm going to finish up by talking a little bit about what else has changed within Surrey in our view to get better asset management, and also what we're looking to do in the future to keep improving. So why did we need to do something different? Surrey maintains around 5,000 kilometres of roads, and back in 2012 the condition of our roads across all different categories was poorer than the national average. As you can see, particularly our unclassified network, where we had 21% of it was classed as poor condition compared to at the time a national average of 16%. So across the whole of our network we had 17% of our roads classed as poor compared to a national average of just 10%. And for our residents and our members, that wasn't an acceptable situation to be in. In terms of our network trend from 2007 to 2012, as you can see, we were looking at a deteriorating network in most cases. So our A roads, as you can see on the blue line at the bottom, were slightly improving, but the other classes of roads were all deteriorating, and particularly, like we said, in the terms of our unclassified network, we were quite away from the national average and not really showing any signs of improvement at all. The plan we put in place to try and arrest the deterioration in our roads was a programme called Operation Horizon. Operation Horizon came about after discussions with our Cabinet and with our finance colleagues, where we talked to them about the deterioration and the ongoing forward deterioration that would occur if we didn't do something different. So what they approved was an additional £25 million budget over 5 years for our major maintenance programme, which was an increase from 12 million to 20, and an additional 5 million also on preventative maintenance. And what we were looking to achieve was really to get more for our money by giving our contractors and supply chains certainty of work and having a 5-year programme enabling better coordination. And the idea was to have the savings that we made reinvested into the roads programme, so that we would have a total investment of 120 million over the 5 years to replace the worst 500 kilometres of roads in Surrey and to deliver over 1,000 separate road schemes. So what you can see here is our network trend up to around 2011-2012, and then if I move on, this then shows you what happened after that. So once we put that increased investment in, the condition improved across all of our road classes, particularly of note the unclassified roads that were very poor before then moved above the national average. Our B and C roads also moved above the national average, and it was just our A roads that, although they had improved, the national average had improved as well. So we were tracking just slightly above the national average in terms of deterioration on the A roads. And in this slide here you can see the consequential improvement in public satisfaction that our increased maintenance delivered. So these are some of the key items from the NHT survey, and as you can see, towards 2014-15 we were getting an improvement in our satisfaction ratings across all of those key areas. So what's happened since then? So this is the slide that takes us up to 2016, and then if we look beyond that, we can see that we maintained a roughly steady state situation for a few years. But if you look at the lines on the bottom of the page, obviously in the last few years the network condition has deteriorated on our principal and non-principal roads. On our unclassified roads we have managed to maintain and further improve the condition, and as that is the largest part of our network, that is still positive, but obviously the deterioration on the key routes is a problem. Similarly, when we look at the public satisfaction, although it was improving for a number of years, it has now started to slightly go the other way again, and it's been a bit more variable in recent years with that increased investment no longer available. So why wasn't that improvement maintained? So on this slide here we've got the condition, but what I've also overlaid in the yellow bars are the budgets. So on the axis on the right hand side you've got the budgets in millions of pounds. So as you can see, in the middle of the 2010s we had that increased investment that coincided with the improvement in condition, and as that budget has lessened again after the initial Horizon investment, so too has the condition of the network. There is some positive news for our roads though, as you can see in this chart that shows our red and amber condition over the number of years. The length of red and amber has been steadily reducing. This is really because of the unclassified network and the fact that that makes up the majority of our network, and we have focused funding there. So while the overall network condition is still not as we would want it, we are at least moving in the right direction. So back in 2016, I also talked to you about what we wanted to do to learn the lessons from how we'd looked for increased investment in our roads, and to use those same strategies for our other key highway assets to make the case for why we needed to invest in them as well. For each of the assets we assessed the condition against a number of criteria and used that to produce estimates of how they would deteriorate across the next 15 years. We used the HMEP lifecycle planning tool, and using that we were able to get the condition of the assets across red, yellow, amber and green, and we could use that to then determine how they would react over the next 15 years. In this example you can see the data that we used to have the discussions with our cabinet and our senior finance colleagues. So in the top part of the slide you can see that our levels that we had around 2015 were about £250,000 per annum for safety barriers, and projecting that forward over 15 years, what we were able to show them was that the condition of the network would deteriorate significantly. We also then modelled what we'd need to maintain the current condition levels on those assets, and so for safety barriers a budget of about 4 times as much as we were spending currently would see us maintaining the condition of red on the network, but would improve the overall asset. So the percentage of the safety barrier asset that was in more serviceable condition would increase quite significantly with that additional investment. The outcome of the work that we did on modelling all of our assets and the potential deterioration over a number of years that led us to be able to have some really good conversations and have the budgets increased quite significantly. So as you can see, in 2016-17 our budgets for our other key highway assets were only around 3 million in total, and moving up to next year they're over 16 million. So that is really significant, and particularly for assets like bridges that historically, like roads, have been severely underfunded, and they really lead to congestion issues when you have to put weight limits and width restrictions on bridges. Also traffic signals have a key role to play in congestion, and those are the kinds of things that our members and our residents are really keen to improve. And so by having the data and being able to display it to them visually gave them a real sense that this was something that they should be investing in, and so we've had a lot of success in terms of increasing those budgets to enable us to manage those assets in a much more proactive and planned way. What else has changed over the last 5 years? So budgets and planned works obviously are key to asset management, but they're not the only things. There are lots of other things that we need to do to improve the service we provide. So in terms of communications and how we actually manage the service and get our data is also very important. So I'm just going to talk to you now about a few other things that we've done to improve the service that we provide. Information we provide to the public is ever more important. The public are much more used to Googling for information and for letting their views be known on social media. So in 2018 we started publishing our planned programmes of work. We've published our programmes for all of our assets and updated them a few times a year to show what had been completed. We also started publishing lists of works that we were considering in future years, because letting the public self-serve to know that we did know that there were an issue on a particular asset would at least give them the encouragement of what we were looking and what they could potentially look to see happening in the future. As technology improves and we get ever better ways to provide information, we've now gone live with a GIS map on our public website. So from this you can see all of our planned programmes of works, things that have been done, things that are being planned in the future, and it's a very interactive map. So this front view obviously is a bit messy looking because it has all the data on there, but what the public can then do is that they can filter. So this slide here just shows our road programme, so things that we are doing in the current year and things that we're planning for the future. They can then zoom into a particular area of interest and actually interact with the map to see what we're actually planning to do. So here we're planning to surface Dresser Road, and they can see the limits and the year that we're planning to do it in. They can also look on these orange highlights are things that we're considering in the future. So here we're considering a surface renewal on this particular road, so they know that we're aware that there's something that needs doing and we will be looking to do something in the future. There's also the option to filter to a particular area, so this is particularly useful for district members, for instance, to be able to just get a look at what's happening in their particular area. And they can again filter further, so if they just want to look at what's happening on the future plans for their area, then they can see that as well. And then there's also the option to look at it in a table form, which they can then export to Excel and use for whatever they need to use it for. And as well as the roads, obviously we have all of our other key asset programs on there. So this shows our structures programs and what we've done and we're planning to do. And then this one shows our traffic systems programs. And we also have newly added things like our active travel schemes are on there as well. And there's also the option to look at historical schemes, so what we've done in the past and when we've done it. I think we'd all agree that potholes are the bane of the highway engineer's life. So just over 2 years ago we ran a hackathon where we invited not just contractors and supply chain, but also app developers and GIS people and various other people, not necessarily anything to do with highways, but to have a 3-day event where we could just talk through what the issues were with potholes and what some of the potential solutions are. One of the things that we were really interested in looking at was whether the technology existed to replicate what our highway inspectors do using technology. One of the things that lots of the video and AI solutions could do was identify a pothole, a defect, and classify its length and its width. But one of the issues was whether it could actually identify the depth, which obviously is a key criteria for us. So we put a tender out in 2020, and we are working with a company called Route Reports, and we're at the stage where we think that we will get to the situation where we are able to use the technology alongside our highway inspectors to actually improve how we detect potholes, which can then feed into our systems to raise works orders. So we're not quite there yet. We haven't really completely agreed that that they can do what we need them to do, but we are seeing some really positive outputs from the project. So that's one that we're really hopeful will improve how we do things going forwards. Gritting efficiency is another area that we've been looking at. At the moment we have 10 weather stations that provide us with our surface temperature information, and we're currently deploying a number of temperature sensors across our network. And the idea is that if we have confidence that those sensors are giving us the right information, we'll be able to move to route-based forecasting, where we'll only need to grit specific routes where we know that it's likely to be particularly cold weather. The benefits for this are environmental, in that we won't have to be going out with our vehicles as often, and also using fewer gritters on the roads, less salt, less diesel, and so we're hopeful that we'll be able to move to that in the coming years. Lane rental is another tool that we're now using. In April of this year, Surrey became the third local authority after TfL and Kent to implement a lane rental scheme. And so these enable us to charge for works on our busiest streets at the busiest times. So the real benefits come from encouraging collaborative working and using different methodologies to reduce the impacts of schemes. And the other really positive part of the lane rental scheme is that surplus funds from the scheme can be used to fund trials and innovative ways of working that reduce congestion. So we're still in the early stages of it, but we've already started to see some improvements in how works on our busiest streets are managed, and we're very much looking forward to having some innovations moving forward with the lane rental surplus in the coming months. Road condition reporting is another area where technology has improved an awful lot over recent years. We've been working with Vaisala to look at their Road AI solution to see whether it could replace our CVI surveys, which, as you know, are very manual surveys, and so currently it takes us 4 years to collect data on all of our unclassified roads. Using video technology in vehicles, we could potentially survey them every year, which obviously will give us a lot better and more current information on which to make decisions. Another area that has increased a lot in usage over the past 5 years is using GIS to analyse data. So we've done a lot of work taking data from different sources and combining them and analysing them to help us make decisions. So on this slide, for instance, we have data that combines our pothole defect data along with some drainage data, so that we can do things like do different solutions where we're getting frequent potholes in an area, but there's also an underlying issue with water, so that we aren't just going there and repairing the same pothole over and over again. This will highlight us areas where we need to do something different to do a better and more permanent solution. Thank you for listening. I hope what I've shared with you over the last 20 minutes has shown you that really data is one of the key things that we all need to be looking at improving to help us make better decisions and to give our decision makers the best information possible, but also the wider aspects of asset management, such as using new technologies and having better communications with the public, are all also areas that we need to all be looking at to give the best service that we can to the public. And I'm excited to see, there's been lots of changes over the last 5 years, and I'm really excited to see how we move forward again in the next 5 years. Thank you.